next morning, he knew that his life has changed inescapably. He could not escape the change. So, from that day on, circumstances pending, he was a monk, albeit still in the world, even though he's still in the world. While awaiting the departure to the monastery, he spent the Apostles' Fast, June 13 to June 12 that year, to July 12 of that year, absorbed day and night in prayer. During this period, Azar was fortunate to accompany monks who had traveled from their respective monasteries to study at the monastic theological college in Alexandria, the seminary. I was given a great opportunity, he recalls in a later interview, to meet many of the monks. He was still a lay person. He was still Azar. He was not a monk yet. I sat with them and listened to the stories of their lives, as well as the lives of the saints. So I loved them. From the church, I began to borrow books and the histories of the saints, and I aspired to attain this life of dedication to the church. Dedication to the church, not to himself. Not even to Christ outside the church, to the church. It was a time of profound preparation. Azar's first sustained exposure to authentic monasticism when he went to the monks to the Alexandria. He's not a monk yet. Pilgrimages or retreats to monasteries at the time were all too rare, most often impossible. Yet here, amid monks in Alexandria, Azar tasted patristic and monastic works, foremost of which was the paradise of the Desert Fathers, Bustan al-Rahman. Not only would this experience determine the course of Azar's life, as one scholar notes, but it would also place many questions against the life of the church as he saw it. Meaning what? There was a contradiction of the church. No. There was a contradiction. Contradiction. He saw that the paradise of the monk and the stories of the saints did not agree at all. What does that mean with the church life? The church was very far from what it should be. Okay? What he read of the saints and monastic fathers was to some degree tragically removed from the church of his day. By the fast's end, and by the way, many people would say that today too, just letting you know. But the fast's end, the young man's elation, his happy feeling, his feeling of good, had grown considerably. On the Apostles' Feast, July 12, his family brought him a large basket of fatir, oil pastries, to distribute to the parishioners for the Feast of the Archangel Michael. His mother used to do that, like you see many of our mothers do it in the church today. On the Archangel Michael feast, which happened to fall a few days later. Incapable of restraining his joy at the prospect of monasticism, because he's about to be a monk, Azar arrived grinning at St. Mark's Church dressed in his finest suit, with peasant's oil-soaked basket on his shoulder. He's dressed in a suit with a tie, and he has and he has a basket of fatir with dripping with oil, entering into the church to distribute the fatir malak. The sight was unusual, bordering on scandalous for the middle class. Azar was unbothered and remarked, if the Lord's disciples each carried a basket of the remaining loaf left over from the miracle of feeding the multitudes, am I better than them? Carried away by excitement, Azar went so far as preparing a curriculum vitae, of which, of course, was hardly necessary. He had a CV. Why is he going to, who is going to give the CV to? To the patriarch and the abbot. He wanted to introduce himself formally so they don't really pick on anything. He doesn't want any obstacles. At the end of the semester at the theological college, the monks began preparing to return to their monasteries. Azar waited, nervous and expectant, Finally, Metropolitan Ioannis called, the date was set. Within a few weeks, Azer would depart with a recently ordained monk priest, Father Bishara el-Baramosi. Ioannis gave Father Bishara a letter of recommendation for the abbot concerning the young postulant, the novice. The Metropolitan, Hannah recalls, also quietly whispered. So the Mutram Ioannis whispered in Abuna Bishara, the new monk that's taken Azer to the monastery, whispered aside. He doesn't want Azer to hear him. What did he say? Be careful to hold on to the young man's clothes and belongings. He reasonably anticipated that perhaps Azer would not last long in the austere and unrelenting desert. He said, don't give up his clothes, keep it aside, because he will come back. He's not going to stay, right? In the early hours of Wednesday, July 27, 1927, Azer awoke, if he slept at all, and packed to anticipate his immediate needs. His father, brothers, and sisters slowly walked with him to the Mahatat Nasr railway station in Alexandria, a kilometer away. There his family and friends gathered to see him off. We can only imagine the tearful embrace, painful kisses, and last words. His direct manager from Thomas Cook and Son, the company he worked for, Alfred Fadel, was also present. He had come to communicate the well wishes of the general manager and notably to remind Azer that his job would indefinitely be waiting for him should he change his mind. Everybody's like expecting him to come. Azer quietly smiled. Hannah notes, his brother said that he quietly smiled, didn't say anything, and thanked him for his generous words. All presumed, or at least hoped, that this was an impetuous, what is impetuous? Impetuous means rushed, not well planned, like done in a hurry, and he would regret it later. Impetuous and short-lived foray into the world of monasticism, like a young man excited about something and it will disappear. But they had only the faintest idea of the unquenchable desire for solitude burning deep within the heart of the young man. They have no idea how much he was so eager to be alone with Christ. They had no idea of the intensity of this desire. They took, that's what he's saying now in a letter, they took me to the train station and gave their blessing. Give me their blessing, I'm sorry. Wrote Azer in revealing autobiographical fragment. And that day on which I forsook the world was the happiest day of my life. I hope they don't know that. But the Hannah knew it. He said, this was the happiest day of my life when I said goodbye. Little else was previously known of his journey to the monastery and his first days there. Yet, at the end of the first two issues of the periodical Harbor of Salvation, this was a magazine that Abu Namina Baramosi used to publish and write when he was in the theological seminary of Hulwan, when the patriarch asked him to go and learn there. So he made the magazine that's called the Harbor of Salvation. عمل حاجة اسمها ميناء خلاص. وكان بيكتب فيها خواطره أو أفكاره أو التعليم اللي هو عايز يقولها. فhe wrote in it this following piece. It was written early 1928. That's after he was a monk. There are autobiographical depictions of the journey. These priceless comments have never been studied, reproduced in any language or even acknowledged. They were seemingly glossed over. مشوا فيهم ناس ما حدش خد باله منهم. Given the rather abrupt place in the narrative section of the periodical. كان في زي قصص محطوطة في بناء الخلاص دي كان جزء منهم. They were lost to history until now. Azer, according to the account, along with Father Bishara and the monks who had been studying in Alexandria, left the world. The train departed from Alexandria station and was going so fast, as it writes. They were waiting for us. We exchanged greetings, and then they bade us farewell, wishing us success. Then the train went forth and stopped at Itay al Barud station. So we changed to the train going to Al Khatabba, where we had a break at the rest house. There we ate with the fathers fresh fish and watermelon. He's describing details like vividly, like he had done it yesterday.
Has he ever been in a monastery before? Or like this was his first time visiting?
I think, huh? I think he did, but yeah. At 4 in the afternoon, they boarded an old train of salt and soda company to Hukariya. You know Hukariya? It's the last village before Wadi Natrum. Arrived at Al Hukariya at 10 o'clock at night. As he left the train, according to the account of Father Raphael, his later disciple, Azir asked the conductor why he was not wearing the customary tarbush, the kumsari. مش لابس tarbush ليه؟ The conductor replied that he did not have the funds to purchase one. قال له معيش فلوس يا بيه. Azir promptly took off his tarbush and gleefully handed it to the conductor. Moments later, he gave his suit jacket to another. Impoverished train driver. ادى الطربوش للكمساري والجاكيت لمين؟ للسواق. In the train, he said, when I arrive and you give me galabiya, I'll send the trousers and the shirt. Okay. Although remember what the Metropolitan said to Abu Nabshara? Hold on to his clothes. Hold on to his clothes, he might come back. He will not even have the clothes. The Metropolitan may have had reservation, but the young man was absolute in his renunciation and consecration. He had no intention of ever returning to the world. Something to think about. He did not think of this as a sacrifice. It's an exchange. He's exchanging something very little for something very big. He is winning. He is very happy, smiling. He's not doing it to, follow a commandment or. Jesus said it. He said, "Whoever puts his hand on the plow and looks behind is not fit. He cannot be good." He's looking forward. He's not looking backwards.
Is that
A gift from God.
spiritual state? Or
Yes.
something innate?
That's a spiritual state. That's a spiritual state. That's given by God, not by anybody else. It's against nature. This is not instinctual. This is against survival. Right? It's against anything.
Is it for those who are chosen, or is it anybody can get there?
It's both. There at the station, one of the monks awaited them to begin the final journey on foot. And this is what he wrote. We walked through this magnificent, endless mountain. While walking, I was looking around for the monastery, and after an hour and 15 minutes, we saw from afar a glimpse of light coming from the top of the mountain. I was so peaceful, and God knows that I had never felt that comfort before. That's him writing it. Azar and the monks approached the monastery in the stillness and silence of the desert. As they drew closer, its obscure form became clearer. Finally, they reached the place Azar had long dreamed of, the home of his enduring hopes. He stood before the monastery's remarkable wall, some 10 meters, 33 feet high, and 2 meters thick, 7 feet thick, covered in an ancient plaster long withered by the golden sands of the Wadi al-Natron. Atop the walls, a walkway spanned the entire length so that the monks could stand guard against raiding Berbers and Bedouins. I was so so astounded, Azar writes, as he neared the whitewashed tower. And he's writing, that's his quote, I was looking for the door. Then the father pointed to a door that was very small compared to this huge building. It was a very solid iron door. At the top end of the door was a bell. This was so that whoever arrived at the monastery responsible for the door would come and through a window overlooking the door could see the visitor. We rang the bell and they opened. See the details? Like he's writing very, very little details as if this is like very much imprinted, right? The Beramos Monastery, the earliest known monastic settlement in the desert of Skitis, was founded in or around AD 340. In Abba Serabion's Vita of Saint Macarius of Egypt, Maximus and Domadius, two Roman princes and sons of the Emperor Valentinian, arrived in Skitis after pilgrimage in Palestine. There they met Macarius, the priest of the desert. After witnessing the profound lives and deaths of these two little strangers, Macarius consecrated their cells, declaring, call this place the cells of the Romans. The monastic community that gathered around Macarius dwelt near these Roman cells, hence the name Baramos, Coptic Baromenos, that of the Romans. Foreign visitors to the monastery, contemporary with Azar, paint an intriguing picture of the time. The reality is likely to be found somewhere in the middle of these accounts. Constantine von Tischendorf, who discovered one of the earliest extant biblical manuscripts, the Codex Sinaiticus, visited the monastery in 1844 and noted that there were 20 monks in the monastery. Here the cells were the blackest of all. They live carelessly from day to day to such an existence. What is the past and what is the future? Nothing. There's no past, there's no future. October 1913, George noted the refectory looked more like a prison than a dining. Refectory is where they eat. So it looked like a prison. It was very grim. A decade later, 1923, Dr. William Hatch was rather impressed by the state of the library and the monastery, counting some 30 monks. And Prince Omar Tosun, who visited in 1931, claimed from his studies that the monastery was the wealthiest of the Wadi al-Natron. One visitor even shared Azar's awe in approaching the monastery. H.V. Morton, a renowned travel writer, was intrigued by the monastery's wall and the vast archway that stood in stark contrast to the unusually small gate. What did they write? The archway was made of giants, but the gate for dwarfs. The archway was made for giants and the gate for dwarfs. So what is the point? Why do you make a small gate like that? They say the practical part of it, the practical part, protection. Protection. The practical part is you protect yourself, so you don't make it easy for people to attack. But at the spiritual aspect of it, you have to bend as you go in. I spoke eloquently enough of this desert raids. I spent some moments examining the door. Never have I seen one so loaded with chains, bolts, locks, and wooden crossbars. This is back to Azar. When I entered, I felt as though I had walked into paradise. That's Spookers. And the monks were like angels, Azar recalls. Once, that's how he saw them. Okay. Once through the disproportionately small door, there was 6-meter corridor with barrel vaulted roof leading to another fortified iron door that opened into the heart of the monastery. As Azar passed through the gates, he was euphoric. What's euphoria? Elated, happy, excited, all of a sudden. The previously undiscovered autobiographical account describes the scene. And that's how he wrote it. All the monks came out from their cells. They greeted us and then led us to the palace prepared for guests. The guests they called the palace, al-Asr. It was a 2-story luxurious palace. The ground floor contained 4 rooms, and there were another 4 on the top floor, which were very well furnished. We waited in a room on the ground floor ready for dinner. Then they brought some water, and everyone participated in washing our feet. The younger monks and the elders, we were ashamed, but they informed us that it was a very old custom since the early father. Now this goes to encountering Christ in the visitor and the stranger, right? We were served dinner and thanked God. After a little while, they took us to the top floor to sleep, so we slept calmly and peacefully. Azar awoke early Thursday morning to the bell of prayer with uncharacteristic energy for only a few hours of sleep. He thought little of the fact that this monastery seemed a world away from the Metropolitan Ioannis' austere and onerous description, and he immediately made for the church where he enjoyed its beauty, which no one could describe. That's how he said it. That the beauty of the church was beyond description. We attended the divine liturgy, as it recalls, and by chance, the priest who served was an honorable, pious elder praying with the Spirit. We felt so happy and thanked God. In another autobiographical account, he is all too brief. I went to the church, attended the divine liturgy, and received abundant grace. After the liturgy, Father Bishara presented the abbot, Hegumen Shinoda, with the Metropolitan's letter, Ioannis. The abbot face suddenly contorted. Something wrong. Azar had spent the night in the guest palace, but he was no guest. He's a novice. You don't put the novice in the place of honor. They're coming to be trained for months. So the abbot was horrified. The guest palace, a 19th century Levantine villa, had been built by Metropolitan Ioannis himself, 1911. It was hardly a residence for monks, let alone beginning novices. In Hannah's memoirs, Azar's treatment was a mistake in the confusion of night. Father Bishara had advertently introduced the young man as a visitor from Alexandria, a spiritual son of Metropolitan Ioannis. Maybe because he still have the words of Metropolitan Ioannis, he's not going to stay. Okay. For this reason, he was treated to relative luxury. He was served dinner, and the generator was even switched on to provide lighting. Nevertheless, it was still a momentous, albeit even though curious, arrival. Novices were few and far between, and rarely, if ever, where educated, they were educated city dwellers. They were not usually farmers. The abbot ordered the bell rung and informed the gathered monks that their young guest had, in fact, come to join them. Many of the monks cautiously whispered and murmured, wondering what manner of monk this would be. It was the first time a novice had spent a night in opulence. We ate breakfast, as a reminisces. Then Father Shenouda, the abbot, showed me the room I would stay in, that is, until they found a cell for me. It was a beautiful room next to the altar, and it was previously customized for the Pope, but now it was used by visitors. I stayed there for a week and rejoiced in abundance. The room in question was once the accommodation of Pope Cyril V, the Kurus al-Khamis, in altogether unpleasant and unfortunate circumstances. As the week went on, Azar would have certainly know what happened. Anybody knows what happened to Kurulus V? مجلس الملي وقفوا وعزلوا وحطوا عن طريق الحكومه، ضغطوا على الحكومه ان يحطوه في الدير، فحضروا له الاوضه دي يقعد فيها. It was a very unfortunate place, a unfortunate incident. Azar would have certainly reflected upon the infamous bad fame, infamous incident. In 1892, Cyril had been exiled to the Bormos monastery following a prolonged contention with the community council Majlis al-Milli. The 6 months of his exile were catastrophic. A puppet replacement, Athanasius, was excommunicated. Churches throughout Egypt were desolate. Sacraments went unministered, and the once faithful became disillusioned. This is what happens when there are scandals in the church. The people who are good in the church and they're faithful, they get a little bit shocked and they say it's all nonsense. We don't want to have anything to do with it. Though Cyril V would return shortly after the episode, would be burned into the monastery's desert memory and would stand as a future word of warning concerning the Majlis for all who dared to enter and later exit as bishops, the monastery's unusually small gates. As the week came to an end, the abbot at last found a permanent cell for Azar. The abbot proceeded to show him where the bread was kept and then left without another word. Azar says, I went to have a look. It was a cell in a 150-year-old building. It had 2 rooms, one outer room and an inner room, and they call it the hermitage, al-Mahbasa. I cleaned and organized. I ate, hanging some icons and the candil, and I brought with me, and it became so beautiful. The cell had previously been inhabited by a blind and saintly monk. Wouldn't care about the looks of it. Presumably Awad al-Barhimi. Since then, it had been left in a state of neglect and disrepair. Hannah notes that the cell was old and deserted, initially uninhabitable. Azar painstakingly scrubbed the ground, sprinkled crushed gypsum, and resealed the floor. He placed his suitcase at the center of the outer room, and this became his makeshift table. The young man donned his cherished black cassock, placed a black covering over his head, and according to Hannah's memoir, looked like he had been a monk for many years. Azar's irrepressible dreams and hopes of the last 5 years had finally been realized. For the next few days, he lived in prayer. When the bell rang for midnight psalmody, tasbihah, he would rush to the church. When the service concluded at 7 in the morning, Hannah is careful to note he would silently return to his cell without mingling with the other monks. The account here, we should note, are unanimous. Everybody's agreeing. Other than the brief and moderately mistaken welcome, Azar was apparently isolated. No one had helped him, and he had not asked for help. He had neither spoken to the others, nor they to him. Already it would seem he was very much alone. And he would prefer it that way. And he would love to have it that way. I'm going to stop here because we might need to start picking on, to read it together and see what you think about what you did. Anything got your attention? Anything that... Okay, so why I read this piece before, just to show you that you can think of it from the word point of view, he's an introvert. You might say that. He's somebody who's very happy by himself and God. And then you're going to take this person and make him a patriarch. Just keep that in mind as you're reading the story. Someone who's going to have a lot of meetings, lead a whole big church of millions of Copts and bishops, and deal with the Majlis al-Milli. It's one of the biggest issues, who had managed to يدمر حياة بطاركة قبل كده. 3 patriarchs actually went screaming to the monasteries because of the Majlis al-Milli and the way they treated them. This is one of the things. This is one of the best things about this book. He explained to you everything. So in the times of Pope, no, you said no. Before you said it's Pope the Fourth, exactly. Cyril the Fourth. He needed help. It's too much work for him, especially So he suggested to the government to appoint rich Coptic people to take care of the endowments of the church money, especially the monasteries. Monasteries was abandoned, there is no monks, but they have a lot of land, buildings, money in the banks. He said, I don't have time for this. Give me some rich who doesn't need money to take care of the money. So they picked educated, very well educated people to make this Majlis and give them the endowments of the Coptic Church. They started looking at the church and they looked at how much money the monasteries have and how deteriorated the church status is. So they said this is a big contrast. The church is very rich, but they're uneducated. The monks are educated, the priests are uneducated. There's a lot of abuse, and not abuse in the way we think about it, like families of priests. A priest would just, the kids would inherit his job and they would take it as a business. Maybe you've heard about this. So we need the church to kind of reform. Something has to be done. So they put a lot of pressure on the next patriarch and the next patriarch and the next patriarch. One of them, Abba Macarius, went running to St. Anthony and at the door of the church said, I know I've made a big mistake by agreeing to be a patriarch because he was I repent. Is this sin never going to be forgiven? And he begged the Majlis, said, just get off my case. Because they wanted to control him and to force him to do things. And they were taking charge of the election, even went to the way to change the election of the track to make it like the secular election. So they would actually make advertisement for somebody. They go and manipulate the votes. They would bribe people. It went so bad, so bad. You're going to hear about it here too. Majlis al-Milli was the pain in, you know what, for all the patriarchs from Pope Kyrillos V, all the way to, one of the things they did is they put Pope Kyrillos in the monastery, like what Sadat had done with Pope Shenouda. They did it. And the government at the time, the Khalifa, agreed. Put the patriarch in it. You're good people, you know what you're doing, he doesn't know. They thought that the leadership from generations the same, that the uneducated monks becoming bishops, they make wrong decisions and they have no idea how to lead the church. They're just illiterate, uneducated, and they control. One of them, and they actually, it was true. You know, some of it is true. Pope Yusuf was controlled by Malik. Malik actually was taking the decision, and Pope Yusuf had no idea. He would actually, Malik was فراش اللي بيسموه الشماشرجي اللي بيلبسه. فكان ياخد, he gets like 3,000 pounds, Egyptian pounds, from a monk, and they ordained him a bishop. And he will tell the Pope to say next Sunday. Okay, so we have a point, and because of that, their position is stronger.
So it's not a matter of corruption, it's just.
No, the Magnus Emilian has a way of seeing it, but what is this book is saying is this man, through prayer and silence, was able to get the church out of this. Now that's what they're going to do with Pope Carlos, and then how he's going to deal with it. This is the whole point. Why would the church make Pope Carlos a saint? Not because of miracles, because he managed single-handedly to take the church out of where it was and bring it to where we are. You know, so in this book you're going to see. That's why I want to read it with you. It's a lot of what we are, to tell you the truth. Where we stand today, how we came to this point, it's him. So in his time, Habib Girgis was starting with Pope during the time of Pope Carlos V. And they went after one after another. They were not lasting, actually. So Habib Girgis started Sunday school movement. And then you have Pope Shenouda, the Nazir Gayyad, and the rest of them. So they studied the church like he did. And they found the same contrast, that what church is doing and what they know to be the truth is not, they're not aligned at all. So the Sunday school movement was a movement of enlightenment, of studying. Let's study what the church should be. They couldn't find it. They only found it with him. He found it first, and he started a single, lonely life of dedication to prayer. And that's all what he cared about. And then when they looked for the Bustan al-Rahban, they couldn't find it in the monks. They found it in him. They went and they were discipled to him. And that's why I have this new generation. Baba Shenouda and Baba Annis B'tal Gharbiya. Abu Namat al-Miskin is one of the disciples. They were all his disciples. And he didn't say any words. He didn't say anything you can actually... Well, this is his private memoirs, writing to his brother. Anyway, so this is why I think it is important to read this book and why this book is a phenomenon, actually. It's very, very important. You will get an idea of where you come from. And then explains to you other things and where we stand. And I don't want us to be kind of, not deceived, no, this is a bad word. Naive. Don't be naive. Do not be naive. Huh? He's the dean of the seminary, the Coptic seminary in Australia. He's a priest in Australia from Sydney who had done a lot of other books, but this one is his most famous. This is PhD thesis for his doctorate. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was doing. Habib Girgis, he was doing the same purpose. Huh? Milli?
What is the word milli?
I really don't know where the origin of the word, but it means the one who's taking care of the maliyat.
Those.
So it's called this because it's not the church who made it. Remember who made it? Now I understand. First time. Thank you, George. But because it is the Khalifa who made it, right? We say Al-Majma al-Muqaddas. Who made this name? No, but it's the church. The church made it. It would not call it the Majlis al-Milli. If you give it to the Khalifa, he will say Majlis al-Milli. Oh, that's the real Majlis al-Milli. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it is very powerful, and I think it's a transformative knowledge if you want to read this. This idea of putting on bishops as patriarchs, bishops with the diocese. So now the new trend is the general bishop, which is okay as long as they don't have a diocese. Okay. I used to have in Boston. We had the archdeacon was actually a deacon with Amba Macarius, who was one of the three, and he said he was crying day and night. Day and night he would cry. He was miserable because they chosen as the patriarch. He regretted it. In the beginning, the Majlis al-Malli pushed so hard to be like an election, like presidential election, and they make advertisement and they gather people around and they yell at in the streets, and then the patriarchate, we want this person, and they bribe the people to go and elect, and eventually he cried big time, and then he used to tell me, God rest his soul, I forgot his name, he was an archdeacon, he was very old, and he said that, Amazir, do you remember Amazir? Amazir, the archdeacon, the Amazir. Yeah, he told me many times, you remember Pope Macarius, he was his deacon, he was deacon with him. He said he used to cry with tears that he regretted to be a patriarch. He should have stayed a bishop. So there's lots in the church that you need to know about, you definitely need to know about. You need to have, not to go into details and to be angry or frustrated, but don't be naive, please. Do not be naive, that's all.
That brings me to a point. I think a lot of times when we talk about the church with the kids, we draw this perfect picture. That, for example, the new Pope, the new Catholic Pope now, when they give his biography, I love the fact that they say all the good things, but they say also that, the bad things. And I feel that we lack this with our kids. Like we want to give them this perfect pictures, and then these kids are going to grow and read on their own and know all these things, and then they're going to look back and say they weren't very truthful with me. I think we need to know how to do it with our kids. I'm not talking from elementary. I'm talking when they
That's the key word.
Being critical.
That is the key word. Is that actually you begin in the early years, maybe up to 11, 12, maybe 14 years old. You don't give anything negative because they're black and white, right? This is the concrete stage. Again, the same thing we talk about in teaching. Concrete is black and white. The kids will tell you, is this man is good? And they look at you and see how you deal with Abuna. If Abuna is good in the eyes of the mother, they hug Abuna. And they're completely open. If Abuna is evil, they're going to cuss and curse at Abuna at a young age. So this is very difficult. So what you do is from 14 you start introducing things from history, and that just the historical things. I think this is the best thing I can do. Introduce history. And, 11, 12. I would just because they say in teaching education, say 14 is the beginning of real abstract thinking, and this discerning of a good person can have faults, a bad person can have something good.
Yeah, I can see it in Camilla now, so I think 14 is a good age.
Like it? But
like in Camilla, yeah, I can see it in Camilla.
Yes. Even between 12 and 14, some kids are there, sometimes are not. So you need to be on the safe side. Which side you want to be on? The safe side, on the risky side. The risky side is go for 12. Safe side, you go a little bit further. And also not only that, so also they have abstract thinking, but they're not able to hold it. They create an anxiety. You don't want to have that too. Like you're breaking down their foundations. You're shaking their stability. So to be on the safe side, start 14, and then start critical thinking and how to see good in something bad, how to see something bad in something good, and to be able to be okay with it.
I'd say one thing also when talking anytime about weaknesses or people teaching about our weaknesses, the big deal is the context in which you're saying. So it seems like on Facebook, people will bring up a weakness of somebody in order to knock them down. Don't listen to this person, push them away. But by the time someone's 12, 14, gets into middle school, they know they have mistakes of their own. They know that themselves, I'm weak. Out of weakness, I've maybe done things that aren't right. And because they understand that, and they say, we're all like that, instead of pointing out a specific person, because then they'll use it to target. So some people use weakness of men to bring them down. So we listen to that. Versus the context of, we're all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. But we're all doing our best, that's why we have repentance, confession. So the context you present the weakness in, I think makes a big deal in how they interpret it.
It needs some tactics, how to do it wisely, rather than just give it to them and they have to deal with it.
And I was not I brought up into a big library full of books just about book killings. And it's I got like
Saturated.
I don't want to say look at it.
Saturated.
So Abuda brought this book to me, and I was like, and I started reading the book. يعني كنا في مشوار I was bored, so I started reading it. What got me into the book is that in the start, in the first few chapters, the guy is talking about Bob Kyrillos messing in front of
Yeah, in the first chapter.
He doesn't shy away from starting to mention him as a human, so I can relate to him now.
Yeah.
Otherwise, when we put him in the scene from the beginning,
As a miracle maker.
the same thing when we talk about the church to our kids. When we talk about priesthood, when we talk even closer to the school, or maybe probably the right thing is the school. We talked about what would happen if the priest do something wrong. Some priests do something wrong before, so it puts the humanity.
Yes, that's
part.
This book shows it a lot, because I used to have some concepts that is really I debated them. Like they say, if somebody has an inclination to get married or attracted to women or girl, can never be a monk. This is common among monks and bishops. You heard it before. There's the story of Abuna Benjamin. I told you. So this guy, young man, he was in the army. And in the army, and he's planning, when he finishes the army, he's going to the monastery. End of the story. And then one time he comes back from the army, from his service, and he sees this gorgeous girl in Alexandria, and he gets so interested. So he follows her, and he tries to talk to her. And then eventually he talks to her, and she answers, and he said to her, can I see you tomorrow? Can I see you tomorrow? He said, sure, we can meet in the church. So he said, I don't know if he asked the church or not. He was looking for the church, and the church is for her. And there not too many churches in Alexandria in his time. So eventually he landed up in where Carlos was the Pope praying. So he's standing there. Remember, he's voted himself. He actually his aspiration to be a monk. So he's going to the service the same day. He wants to see the girl. So eager about it. Standing there. Pope Carlos was going with the Sharia around the church. He comes to him. He takes the Sharia from the right hand, puts it in the left hand, and he says nothing. Takes the Sharia back into his right hand and goes to this young man stopped thinking about the girl immediately. And back to the idea of going to the monastery, he realized that he cried. And he went back to the service, finished, and he became a successful monk. And he became a saint, Abuna Benjamin. But that shows me that this idea of somebody getting distracting at one time, it doesn't label him as not unfit for monastic life. You see that this is more to humanity than I think we get. We get these rigid rules of this should be done this way, and that's it. If you don't do it this way, then it's going to be no, that's not God. Never was Christ like this. I will tell you something. Recently, this last couple of weeks, I was reading the part from Mark which says his family, St. Mark, his family went when he started preaching Jesus. He said to the people, why are you listening to him? He's crazy. is demon possessed. This is very interesting. A little later, in the same chapter, a little later, his mother and brothers come to check on him. You see the link? Is demon possessed and crazy? If you have somebody in the community demon possessed and crazy, what do you do? Call his mother and his brothers. So the fact they're coming when Jesus said, who is my father and my mother? Or my mother and my brothers. This is the time when they came to check on him to see what's happening. Why do you call him crazy? It's a human thing. It's very human. Even Jesus.